What's up, guys? Your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson here, and you might notice this recording sounds different than the usual podcast, and that is because I'm sitting outside here in Lockhart, Texas, recording this ad into my iPhone. It probably sounds pretty crappy. Well, I'm doing this to show you something very cool. Many of you guys know that my production team works over at Podsworth Media, and they've been producing my show for quite a while. I get a lot of questions and people asking, who does your podcast? Why does it sound great? And I'm telling you why. It's because the guys at Podsworth are amazing. They've got this brand new online app for taking rough recordings like this and making them a whole lot cleaner and more listenable with just a few easy clicks. It will remove background noise. It reduces plosives. It fixes clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high. Clipping, which is distortion from recording with the gain up too high, which I can promise you I've done many times. And they fixed this for me. It removes clicks and pops. And then also levels out the dialogue. So there's no crazy where the guest sounds too loud or the interviewer sounds too quiet. Here's what you guys can do. All of y'all that are interested in recording podcasts or audiobooks or anything, if you're a pastor and you want your sermon recorded, whatever the case may be, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You drag and drop your audio files or click to open your file manager. This also works on your smartphone's web browser. You customize your settings that you want, but the default works fine on most podcast recordings. Then enter code BUCK50. BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. You don't need an account, just an email address and payment. And you'll get a download link in your email for your cleaned up files. How cool is this? The guys at Podsworth run everything they do through this app before they do anything else to it. So all of my recordings go through this app that we're talking about. It works great. Like I said, any spoken word recordings, obviously for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, audiobooks, whatever. It will make awful recordings sound listenable and much more professional. So, like I said, go to podsworth.com and click Get Started. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK50, for 50% off of your first order. You can use promo code BUCK50, BUCK50, for 50% off of your first order. Let's get it.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquids, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you with me here once again this week, where this is the first time I've done this. I'm splitting this episode up into parts 1 and 2, and that is because the conversation was so good and lengthy, we didn't want to stop. So rather than give you 2 hours of something to try to focus on at one time, let's just break it up. And so this week is part 1 of our, can we call it a series? If there's 2 parts, let's call it that. Part 1 of our series on internet orthodoxy, technology, and things in this nature. And of course, favorite guest of the show is back, Father Turbo Qualls. And then I've got George Michalopulos, who's been on the show before. He runs the Monomakhos blog, which is a very, very widely read blog from people across the world. A lot of people read it. Let's leave it at that. We get into a discussion on his blog and content being put out and pushback he may get sometimes. And then my friend Alex Braszko, this was his idea as we get into here in this show. He's been on the show before as well, knows a lot about, I can't say exactly what he does. He can't either, but you'll get the picture. He knows a lot about top secret clearance stuff, intelligence stuff, a lot of computer and software type stuff, web design, all of these things he's very good on. And so we'll get into that. He's actually kind of the moderator of this discussion, and I'm less of a moderator and more of a just person on this panel to talk about this because I put out content and that's part of what we're talking about. Do people in our world Do we go too far with certain topics that we shouldn't be discussing on a public platform? Do we come across as lacking humility at times? Are there things we should work on if we're going to represent orthodoxy on a big platform? What are the pitfalls? What are the good things? Are there people that are knocking some of these shows and this content maybe unfairly? So we get into all of this, and I always tell y'all about the club. I, might as well push it again over at patreon.com/counterflow. If you donate $5 a month or more, you get into our exclusive club. Once a month, we have Zoom sessions that aren't recorded. They're private. I have myself, a guest, and all of the people that are involved in this club get to do a lot of questions and answers with a special guest. We've had a lot of fun. We've had Cyprian on there. We've had David Patrick Harry. We've had David Gornosky. I'm in the process of planning it for this next couple of weeks here. So once the announcement's made, the people in this club get a notification about it and get the Zoom link. It's a lot of fun, guys. Let's see. I guess I should just jump into it. And, you know what? Really quick. This might be put out on Wednesday as opposed to Tuesday because many of my loyal followers know that my last episode was kicked from the platform that starts with a YOUTUBE. It was kicked. And you can find it on my Rumble channel. It's got Dr. Naomi Wolf. We talk about the, I'm not going to say what we talk about. Go to Rumble and find it if you still haven't seen that episode. It's very good. It's very controversial, obviously. It got pulled from the main platform that we use. And my band should be up Wednesday. So I think that's when this episode will drop. And I'm excited. I get baptized this weekend. Father Turbo will be in town here taking part in that. So should be fun. But let's just get to the intros right now. Here we go with part 1 in our series on internet orthodoxy. Let's get to it. I think it's the most guests I've had on one episode. I've done live streams with more people, but this is an actual episode. I'm happy to be doing this. I've got Alex Braszko, George Michalopulos, and my spiritual father and Alex's, Father Turbo Qualls. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Buck.
Thanks, Buck.
All right. So let's go around. I feel like I'm on ESPN. Let's go around the horn. and Alex, I'm going to let you intro yourself. Just give people a brief introduction, especially you. I was telling you off air, I don't know what I'm allowed to say about you and what I'm not allowed. You're just some kind of double agent, 007 kind of guy. George, then we'll do you. And we'll save the best for last, Father Turbo.
Absolutely. Okay, so my name's Alex Braszko. Yep, everything I say today is my own personal opinion. Does not represent the opinions of the United States Army, the federal government, or any other organization. I'm currently working for an organization within the federal government where I am the social media and web content team lead. So basically the website and all the social media platforms that we use for the organization where I'm at, that's what I'm in charge of. So that's it.
Okay. I can actually also say nothing I see on here represents the federal government either. I can't wait.
Father, should we say something like that for the church if we're not priests? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, you're faithful member of the church, so you're sons of the church. So,
There you go.
All right, George, go ahead, sir.
Well, I am George Michalopulos. My wife and I, the lovely Gail Shepherd, run a blog called Monomakhos. It's been around for about 11 years now. And, I'm just forced gumping my way through life here. Just, commenting on politics, culture, and religion from a Orthodox perspective. I would say from a conservative perspective, but that's not, I don't know what that means anymore. And let's just say traditionalist and, what it used to be an American, what it used to be an American. And obviously, Gail and I are very, very devoted to the Orthodox Church. And we just try to provide a forum for people to discuss things.
Father Turbo.
I'm Father Turbo Qualls. I'm the rector at St. Mary of Egypt, Serbian Orthodox Church in Kansas City, Missouri. And I have a show, podcast that I'm on called The Real Path. And yeah, I'm a devoted servant of Christ and his church.
So the four of us are together because this is kind of a brainchild here of Alex, and everyone, well, not everyone, I suppose, but a lot of people listening will understand that there's been dust ups here and there about what we might call online orthodoxy versus internet orthodoxy, and the use of technology, what makes things better, what are some pitfalls to address in this kind of wide variety of media that's out there. And so we're going to address all of that. And I'm going to allow Alex here, since this was his brainchild, and he's so well organized, much more than I am when I prep for a show. This is the most organized I've ever seen anyone prep for a show. So I'm going to allow Alex to run this sort of, and I will be more so on the panel, and then I'll jump in to moderate here and there. But I think that's how we're going to do this. So Alex, I'll kind of give it to you.
Okay. Thank you, Buck. And thank you, honestly, thank you for letting us have this discussion. It's a very important topic. I know people privately are speaking about it frequently in their own circles. And there was a recent podcast, I guess, or recording put out by Father Josiah Trenum on Tech Tuesday with Bishop Irene of London and Western Europe. And I thought it was great that he actually asked the bishop the questions that he did, which so many of us are, talking about addressing and talking to our spiritual fathers about. And he got some great feedback from the bishop. I thought it was great. I actually found myself wanting to dive deeper into the questions that he asked and some of the answers that he gave. I thought it did a pretty good job summarizing things, but maybe not covering everything. So that was one of the things that led me to ask you for this opportunity, Buck. And so again, thank you for it. But yeah, I'll just I'll kick it off if it's okay with some facts to get the juices flowing here. So the Wall Street Journal recently ran a report. It shows that 8th graders' test scores in history, U.S. history, and civics fell to its lowest levels of all time in the year 2022. Okay. There are studies done, I think, by Pew Institute and other statistics institutes that talk about our young people on average having access to social media, up to about 6 hours a day. I think the global social media average is about 2.45 hours per day per person in the world. So if you think about it, that's people that have smartphones and people that don't. That's the global average. So about almost 3 hours of social media usage a day. That's not playing video games. That's not online courses. That's not use of the internet for other reasons. That's social media usage. So about 3 hours a day. But so kids are probably about double that, the younger kids. Okay. Actually, 40 school districts nationwide, this was put out in the press recently, are seeking damages after filing lawsuits against various social media platforms for, quote, knowingly causing harm to children, unquote, with malicious algorithms as reported by, say, the Daily Mail. Okay. And those states are California, New Jersey, Maryland, Oklahoma, Utah, Washington, Rhode Island, and Idaho, right? 2018 study found Americans believe about 39% of what they see or hear on TV is misinformation, but about 65% of what they see or hear online in social media platforms they think is misinformation. And I'll qualify that. Misinformation is the unintentional mistakes, such as inaccurate photo captions, date statistics, translations, or made when satire is taken differently, which is different than disinformation, which is fabricated or deliberately manipulated content that's intentionally trying to create rumors or conspiracy theories or whatever you want, right? So, and then the Integrity Institute recently published results of online misinformation that found that, quote, a well-crafted lie will get more engagements than typical truthful content, and that algorithms contribute to the spread of misinformation, unquote. And my last point, before we get going here is a recent search of top Orthodox Christian websites. I did a poll myself. I just Googled top Orthodox Christian websites, and I came back with 80 results. Many of them are official church sites, and many of them are unofficial. Many of them include your all's Buck and George and even Father Turbo. So there's a lot of people doing social media out there. Social media is very much a part of our life, a big part of our life. Some people see that as being a good thing. Some people see that as being a dangerous thing. So that's kind of why we're having this discussion today. But I really just wanted us to approach, because you all have the experiences of being in a position where some might say you're an Orthodox influencer. So I really wanted to get your perspectives of things and just dive a little bit into why you do what you do. So my first question will be, I guess, Buck, Father, and then George. Tell us about your online Orthodox, or if it's not fully Orthodox, your social media experience. And why did you start doing what you're doing? What's the origins of it? And what are you hoping to accomplish from the forums that you're in? So Buck, you're the first.
Okay. That's changed, interestingly enough, over the last few years, because I started this platform as a strict anarcho-capitalist, I suppose, libertarian outlet I looked at it as, maybe I still do, but in a different context. I looked at it as providing truth to people that I just thought it could be a forum where people learn things that they didn't know otherwise. And at the time, I thought only in the material world. So I thought anarcho-capitalist economics and legal principles were the way to go. And that if more people knew that, then more people would understand it, and then we'd have an ANCAP society.
Right.
I think I'm wrong. No, I that didn't happen. And so I also dove into it because I had a lot of quote unquote heroes in that world. And I thought, if I get this platform, I can meet them, learn stuff from them, interview them, and then get that out, because I'm not smart enough, but I think they are. So if they're the guest, I'm just the guy providing the platform. So I got to do that for a few years. And then as I became more aware of certain things, I suppose, and disheartened by the world around us, and then that led me at some point to the Orthodox Church, as did me moving 5 minutes away from one, which was a fun, as I would have thought, coincidence at the time. And my thoughts and cares and worldview changed over the last couple of years, and so I think it wasn't even by design, but I think that has led to the show kind of going into a different direction than it used to, because frankly, I'm not interested in talking about libertarian politics anymore. I sometimes listen to others talk about it, but I just have no interest in that for the most part, I will say. And so I feel weird saying that my platform is that I'm an Orthodox influencer. I for sure feel weird. I'm not comfortable with that label at all. I don't know if that's true or not. I can't even think about it really, because it sounds strange. And so now I look at this platform the same way I did. I do think it's helping get truths out there. And there's people that now that I want to talk to and meet in the Orthodox world. And I get to show the world, what they're saying. So I've had so many people. Father Turbo is an example. I met him through this technically. And so many people have been changed and have come to the church because of interviews that I know for sure I have done with him on my show. I've had people write me and say, I saw this one with Father Turbo, or I saw that one, and I found a church, and now I'm going to church, and that's obviously not me. That's not on me because of me. That's because of Christ. And but if this platform allows people to do that and convinces people to do that somehow, I think it's pretty cool. It still surprises me in a way that I feel not worthy, I suppose, when I get people writing me constantly on Twitter and saying like, hey, thanks for this one show. I'm a catechumen now, or I just got baptized. So thank you. So that's kind of neat, I suppose. And I think that's doing good work, but I don't necessarily say that I set out to do that work, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's there's a lot of good, I think, coming from what you're doing. When you wake up in the morning and you think about your shows and you think about the guests that you're going to invite, what goes through your head? What motivates you to get the next guest on, and or what like criteria you're looking for the people you bring on?
It's usually something that's inspired me to be more curious about a certain person's work or jump more into what they do and where they're getting their information from. I'm a big fan of the Royal Path, so I watch every episode, and Father Turbo always inspires me to think about things in a different way. So having him on is for that type of thing. I guess we're going to bring this up at some point, but I had Naomi Wolf on, if I'm allowed to even say her name on the air. I got that episode stricken and removed, but I saw her information on the things that happened in 2020 and the last few years that shall go unnamed, I suppose, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. And so, for instance, with her, I thought she's great on this subject, and what she's doing is kind of heroic work. People say what I do is heroic work in real life, not this podcast, but really the stuff she's doing and this information that she's getting out there is heroic, in my opinion. And so I thought that's someone I need to get on, and I want to get those type of voices out, because I don't want to, if it's inspiring me, it should inspire others. I don't want to keep a thought in my own head and go, well, this really inspired me, or I found this interesting or enlightening. I'll just keep it here. I want other people to hear it and see it. So that's kind of a thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Father, should I repeat the question, or you got it?
Yeah. So,
so why do you do the Royal Path, Father?
Yeah.
And what do you hope to get from the Royal Path, or why do you do? What's your motivation for it?
I do the Royal Path because, I love Christ. I love his people. And I know it's going to sound, proud, and it's going to sound, and maybe it is, but I just saw a real absence of the Royal Path in regards of what's being represented. And I found more often than not that, what's presented are opinions and perspectives, which are totally fine. I'm not opposed to that. But in regards of, really trying how to live as an Orthodox Christian, and really trying how to, live in this world, in the real world, I know that it's sorely lacking. And so there's a story, it's been told a little bit, but just in a nutshell, I really had, and still just less of a disdain, but I had a real disdain for personally, not people who did it, but me personally, for being on the internet and things like that. I mean, I've had a Facebook and things like that over the years, but and I've done things, but I think relatively speaking, prior to 20 and 21, my internet presence was very, very minimal. Very, very minimal. And what really began that journey for me was when Patriarch Porphyry, my patriarch, when he came in, when he was enthroned as Patriarch of Serbia, he had put out a statement, and he was sharing that the internet are the rooftops of now, and that the gospel needs to be preached. And it really resonated with me, and I really took it to heart, and not in some sort of naive, superficial way, because again, you'd have to get it all into this, but His Holiness, his track record of serving the church and serving people who sometimes, unfortunately, quote unquote, members of the church haven't wanted to serve, spoke volumes. So, before he was the patriarch, he was serving people and serving the unwanted, and really being in the trenches, people with addictions and people in counterculture. This is what he was known for. And so when he said that, And I've had the blessing of meeting His Holiness in person, so I can say he's a true shepherd in that sense. And so I took it to heart, and I really began to look at what had been bubbling underneath the surface in my mind and my heart for years, and really say, I think whether I like it or not, I think I need to start sharing some things and sharing a perspective that I think will help people find the church and stay in the church. Because, I have an evangelist heart. I don't want to be as bold to say I'm an evangelist, but I definitely have the heart of an evangelist. And I am a spiritual father. I am a shepherd. And my whole fiber and being is dedicated to keeping the flock of Christ in the pen. That's the most important thing in my life, is that those who are the fruit of my Lord's suffering, that He receives every ounce of that fruit. So anyone that would go wayward, if God could use me to help them to stay in the church, then thanks be to God. And I just want to say this because there's so much scandal. And it's not even the big things of like clergy scandals. I mean, there's just so much scandal in regards of what people can perceive to be orthodoxy on the internet. And it's a real need in regards of trying to give some light. And so that was my motivation, and it's still my motivation. I don't really think people are so interested in my opinion on something, but I do think that they can benefit, and I do think people are interested in my experience, and I want to make that distinction: my experience versus my opinion on something. And so that's where that came from, essentially, in a nutshell. And I've watched the church develop over the last 20 years, whatever, and especially something that I think is pertinent. I don't know why, but the church in the States has really been, in some regards, a forerunner in regard to the use of media. I mean, some of the first podcasts, just in general, that got traction were Orthodox podcasts. I mean, My Life in Christ, and even, the Illumined Heart. I mean, this is stuff that was, really kind of cutting edge. I mean, I was on a, I was on a podcast early in those times. I mean, right at the time that the Illumined Heart started, called, I think it's like Orthodox Generation Orthodox, I remember it was, but the church has been doing this for a while. So I think that's something that a lot of people may not know, is that Orthodoxy has had a presence in the interwebs for a long time. And it's the events of the last, handful of years that have really brought it to where it is in regards of people are kind of paying attention. But let's just be really clear. It's been out there and in the internet, and even in like the proto manifestations of social media, Orthodoxy's been there from the beginning, for better or for worse. So I just think it's important to kind of say that it's not really as new of a phenomenon as some people might paint it. So.
Right. So a follow up to that, George, before we hit you, Father, what you've got a pretty big parish, and it keeps growing every day.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say if someone asks you, well, why not just talk to the people in your parish and leave it at that? Why is there a need to get online to talk to individuals about, like you said, your experiences, not your opinion, but your experiences? Why is that important?
Well, I have found it's important because, generally speaking, if people can talk to someone and find some, generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, if someone can find someone to talk to in person and make that connection, they will. And so what's not being asked on the other end is, why is it that people are finding that absence? It's because there is a real absence. And that's something that just, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But I mean, the reality is like, that's the world that we're living in. And I don't mean in the sense of people being connected to the internet. I mean that people are starving and they're hungry and they're thirsty for actual spiritual meat and drink, not just information. And that's what a lot of people aren't talking about. So that's how I would answer that.
And I would just say my own personal experience. I agree, Father. There's a lot of issues that we as Orthodox Christians, and I'm a cradle Orthodox, right? So, but there's a lot of Orthodox Christians that we've been facing our whole life. But there's a lot of issues that are popping up right now, and questions that we have that are so novel, so new. A lot of us don't even know how to approach it, right? In the technology field, right? AI, brain machine interfaces, what's acceptable, what's not. Should I be employed where I'm working with AI? Is that a sin? There's just so many things out there. Of course, the past 3 years and everything we've seen over the past 3 years raised a lot of questions. And I think a lot of people are looking for guidance and wisdom in the church. And they're looking for communication from the leadership in the church. And because these things are so new, so novel, maybe the leadership hasn't had time to really research it or think about it or absorb it. So we're going to where we can go to try to get some good information. Oftentimes,
I was just saying, forgive me, and I know I hand it over to George, but that's only one portion. That's only one side of it. There's a whole other side of the people who aren't Orthodox, who are trying to flee to an ark because they see the waters rising around them.
Oh, yeah.
When you have people who 4 years ago would have rolled their eyes at someone using the term evil or the terms, demonic, or they would just roll their eyes at that term.
Mm-hmm.
And their eyes are awakened and they are searching for an ark. And that in of itself is worthy of having not just a conversation, but doing something about. Right. I can just tell you, I'll just say this and I'll be quiet. Forgive me, George.
That's okay. No, I'm enjoying this.
And this is, I'll stand by this, I'm sure I'll get some comments, but I'll stand by this. I think the one thing that I think people may resonate is, I know what it's like to be an outsider. Not just, kind of because I'm tattooed and subculture, but I know what it means to just be knocking at the door of the church because it's the ark.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it means. And a lot of people that are involved on one end of this conversation in the kind of 10,000 foot view, they don't know what that feels like. They don't know what that feels like. And so it's very different when you're the one who's not inside the ark and you're running for your life. And some people may say, like, oh my gosh, that's so dramatic, that's so hyperbolic. And if you think that, if you, this is what's great about you, Alex, and you, George, being here, but forgive me, I'll just say it. If someone who's been raised in the church, right, quote unquote cradle, if you hear me saying that or someone saying that, it just seems too dramatic to you, too hyperbolic, I would say that's part of the problem. Is that when someone says to you, no, I need the truth. There's nothing but death out here. If you get the sense of rolling your eyes or like, oh, this is too much, or like, why don't you just go find a Baptist church? Why don't you just go to the yoga studio? As an Orthodox Christian, if that's what you think, and some people do, unfortunately, that's
you're right.
Part of the
problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Father. Okay, George, your origins of what you do, why you do it, and what you hope to accomplish every day when you wake up and do what you do.
Oh, I don't know what else I can add to what Buck and Father have said. I mean, really, I started the blog because a dear priest friend of mine said, George, you need to start writing. You just need to start writing. I said, well, if you can help me create a blog, it took about a better part of a year of him pestering. And I just had all this information or knowledge or insight, some good, some bad, some indifferent, and I just put it out there, and it didn't start out as a religious thing, but it certainly it grew into it mainly because of scandals in the church, broadly speaking, in which I had a definite opinion on, but and then another priest, gosh, I don't know if I should say names because it could be the kiss of death.
Let's not say names. Let's not say names.
Let's just say La Boccia della Morta, kiss of death. He's retired. He said, George, this is a ministry. And he said this to me about 6 years ago. And I said, what? You're kidding. No, he said, George, you're offering a ministry. And I just one ear and out the other, you know. But ever since Gail came on board, we've come to view it as a ministry. We're not making any money off of this, but Gail's retired. I'm semi-retired / underemployed. And, we just do this because we really like it. And we really like the people who come on. We see that there's a vacuum, which we are unwittingly filling. I mean, it's not something that, I'm not some guy with a library here of, in a dispenser of knowledge or anything like that. But we have friends who are not Orthodox Christians who are part of the blog. And going back to what Father Turbo said, people are looking for the ark of salvation. And, in the last 3 years, especially, my eyes have been opened. There is evil. I saw what Naomi Wolf said. I thought, chalk one up for the good guys here. I mean, here, a secular Jewish intellectual, so we're gonna, as long as we have our health, we're just gonna keep on doing it and enjoying it. And I don't know what else to say.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. Thank you. That answers the question. I'm going to read something really quick. I do have a recent individual that I've met who's done quite a bit of writing for Orthodox publications, Orthodox articles, non-Orthodox articles, Christian websites and Christian publications as well. His name is Robin Phillips. I have discovered that I really like a lot of what he's written. Because at first glance, when you read something, you may think that you figured him out immediately, put him into a camp, one of the two camps. But if you really pay attention, and I've had to do it myself, where I've had to read something he's written 2 to 3 times to understand what he's trying to really get at. And sometimes he's not even expressing a side as much as emphasizing the value of the process of really thinking about what we're saying and doing and the impacts of those things. So I'm just going to read a quote from something that he wrote. David is a 26-year-old conservative who has become deeply distrustful of information coming from mainstream media or establishment sources. After being radicalized by Alex Jones, he has begun doubting everything from the moon landing to the existence of viruses. He's part of a group of like-minded friends who routinely bemoan how gullible most people are to information supplied by mainstream outlets. However, when it comes to conspiracy theories or alternative news sources, David himself is extremely naive, as he routinely repeats ideas and shares links without first investigating the veracity of the claims. Now, David's information consumption habits are very similar to Alliston's. Alliston's a college freshman who believes the United States is on the verge of a takeover from right-wing, heteronormative, hate groups, and extremists. Allison routinely consumes videos from YouTube that confirm her beliefs about the world, yet rarely does she perform due diligence on the truth content of the videos she watches and shares. Allison and David are not real people, but are composites of numerous people who have spoken with, who he has spoken with over the years. The patterns they represent are becoming all too familiar. Naive consumption of information coupled with resistance to performing due diligence on information being consumed and circulated. So Allison and David represent a wider cultural trend towards what has been described as a deficit in information literacy. And I sure screwed up a couple places in there, but I want to give credit to Robin Phillips in writing that. And so he brings up some points, right? Kind of a little bit of a description of some of the world that we see today. And sometimes these are the consumers of the online services or products that you all are offering, right? So my question becomes this. So is critical thinking, is due diligence, Is that important as Orthodox Christians as we listen to online orthodoxy or online sources for information about orthodoxy on the internet? And Father, I'll start with you.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It gets to the heart of really why um, I started the project, and it's always that the kind of core. Um, don't always hit it myself or ourselves, and God be the judge, but the desire is to always hit that stride of not looking at something from a partisan or even a materialist or even a political perspective, but a Christ. Forgive me. The saying it's thrown around a lot, like seeing something from an Orthodox perspective. That statement itself is kind of a trap because you know I think when people say that, they don't always take in mind what that context actually should mean, right?
Mhm. Right.
And so for me, I do. And someone can say, well, how can you be so bold, Father? I can just say, because, um, you know, that's how I have survived. And I fear God. And I fear God with the terror of being entrusted with souls. And what that means is um, I know from experience that anything outside of Christ will really at the very best get you to like a zero sum, if not be detrimental. And part of the problem is that seems too Pollyannish. It seems too naive. It seems impossible for people. But I would just say actually that's part of the problem is that we all need to be living like that. And this is what I'm trying to get at is critical thinking doesn't really do much in this area. What's needed is discernment.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
what's needed is you get discernment by having the mind of Christ. And you get the mind of Christ by being purified. And you get purified by being obedient to the tenets of the church. Like that's the process. It's always been the process.
Mhm.
So that's how we learn to live as we're supposed to live in the world. Does
Mhm.
that mean that we all need to be lockstep drones? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that um, there is a place to talk about, policy, and there is a place to talk about, the Chiefs versus the Ravens, and there is a place for these things. But in regards of getting to the truth, it isn't just some sort of kind of catchphrase. If you don't understand and experience and live that truth is a person, that's part of the problem again.
Mhm.
And if you live as you're supposed to live, meaning that truth is a person, meaning Jesus Christ, and meaning that our sacraments, the life of the church that we're engaged in, it is there to facilitate union with Christ, theosis, right?
Yep.
If you really take that in mind, then what happens is everything that you take in, there should be a growing measure of what the fathers call vigilance, watchfulness.
Mhm.
How is this affecting me? What is the end goal of this? Right? Some people, a lot of people, they read something to get titillated. Some people feed off of being angry, and that's fine. You know what I mean? But and it's the thing that gets them up out of bed, right? Which is totally fine. But I just think the thing is as an Orthodox Christian, this is I think a good way to kind of lay it out for all of us. We are on a journey, right? And we are sailing the seas of this world. Our person, our body, our soul, our spirit, this is the ship that God has given us to navigate. And you have a map, and the map is the tradition of the church, right? What the fathers have taught, what the scriptures have given us, what the ecumenical councils have ratified, right? The experience of the saints. That is the map to get to the destination, which is the kingdom of God, right?
Right.
If you have that worldview, then whatever rapids, sandbars, storms, whatever you come across, right? Natural disasters, political, civil, strife. Like, listen to the petitions, listen to the Great Litany, listen to what we pray. These things are covered. And I don't say that in a way of just check your brain out, but just understand that there is this thing that we have to navigate. And what I mean by that thing is not just life, but we have to navigate this life as Americans in the 21st century, living in a fractured, hostile territory. Right. And if you do not understand that, that's where it becomes really easy to feel like you need to figure it out on your own. And that's why I would say making the distinction between just kind of critical thinking and discernment, because they're not the same.
No, thank you, Father. That in itself is a important enough topic and discussion. What you just said, awesome summary for the show today. But
That's the money shot.
yeah, that's the money shot. But and I won't ask George and Buck to explain the difference between discernment and critical thinking.
No, that's right.
But what I will ask him, Father, did you want to say anything else about that, Father, before I continue the question with Buck and George?
Sure. We're all called to employ critical thinking because we all have jobs. We all have families that we have to guide, we have to provide for.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards to big picture, right? In regards to like the why, critical thinking doesn't help you understand the why. Only discernment does.
Okay.
And the why is what informs the what, the who, the how. And that's where critical thinking can come into play.
Roger. Yep. Thank you, Father. So Buck and George, what I'm going to ask you is, from the content that comes into your hands, because I'm sure there's a lot of people sending you stuff that they would love to see or hear or see posted online, right? How do you how do you navigate, like Father said? How do you navigate if you're going to post that on your website or not? If you're going to allow comments on it or not? Buck, how do you decide? And I'll start with you, Buck. How do you decide whether you want to have that guest on your show or even have that discussion? Over to you, Buck.
It has to be, man, this sounds selfish, but it has to be someone that I personally find interesting or enlightening. You know, I've had people suggest, oh, get this person on or get this first. Why didn't you get that person? And my instinct is to say, I don't know, you get them. You make your show and you do it if you want. Like, I don't have interest in this person for better or worse. So that's not some deep level of discernment even necessarily, or even maybe critical thinking. It's like,
it might be due diligence, right? Because you research these people before they come on your show.
I do that, a lot of that.
Okay.
And it's someone, I was sitting with two musician friends once, and bebop jazz came on, and one of them said, "This is so terrible," and another one said, "You just don't understand it." And he said, "I don't have to understand it. It's music. I have to hear it, and I like it, or I don't like it. It's that simple." And so I guess I would make that analogy to, like, if I see a book, the book's great. I look up online, the person has interesting things to say, then I want them on. And then in the research and due diligence, I try to make sure that they don't have some kind of thing in the background online that's get a bomb dropped on me of, something completely crazy, but that's very rare. I will say even Dr. Naomi Wolf's past was a little bit like, Rhodes Scholar. Some of those little things were like, okay. But what she's saying on this topic is so very important. I'm willing to overlook things that aren't necessarily what I'm into, if that makes sense.
It does. That's great.
And then things that, as far as orthodoxy goes, there have been things that were sent my way that seem to rub up against the church in a negative way that I've asked Father Turbo for advice on some of it. And if I don't, it's like, if I can be the first filter and he's the second, sometimes it doesn't make it past me also. And I'm like, no, that's something's not right about this. So it's just an instinct, gut feeling. And then what if the person or their subject is interesting, really.
So, Father, is that a good practice, Father, to consult with your spiritual father if you're an Orthodox influencer, maybe get his thumbs up or thumbs down on a topic, a discussion, or what do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, it's wise in any sense, I mean, If you're writing a newspaper, you get an editor, you have a proofreader, I mean, how many times have we been growing up and you've heard mom say, call your sister over, call someone here, taste this. How's this taste? Right? Before she serves it. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, more salt, ma. Okay. Right.
Right.
So that's just something that we see playing out in kind of the normal natural world anyways. So when you add the layer of the necessary layer of humility and just saying like, I can't see everything. I have blind spots, right? And then you seek to get that blind spot addressed. I mean, it's what I do, it's so it's just wisdom, right?
Okay. George, can you tell us about your content selection when everybody's sending you things? How do you filter it? How do you discern or think critically or due diligence on what you post online?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I have Gail, and Gail is the researcher par excellence. And I mean, I try to research. I mean, I know how to read a paper and all that, but sometimes I just don't have time. As far as the comments, she releases most of them, and there are some that she doesn't release. And I ask her, babe, why not? She goes, well, it's a little too caustic or something like that. I've learned to accept that feminine intuition. Because when I started the blog, it was a free for all. You could write whatever you wanted, comment, Alex B or Bob's S or and say, well, I think Bishop so and so is a pedophile, or whatever, and because I'm like you, Buck. I'm a libertarian at heart. Of course, that's not workable, but I am a First Amendment absolutist. I mean, and I really want it, and I don't shy from comments. I mean, I had some people during the great OCA time of troubles that we had several years ago, in all caps, say, George, you are a heretic. I left it. Didn't bother me. I'm Greek. I've been called worse. But another priest told me, you really need to not allow defamatory comments on that. I said, why? He goes, well, because you could get sued. I said, oh, okay. So, and since then, since Gail's been a part of it, it's there's a back and forth. We've got a backlog of maybe 20 stories that are just waiting, but they've either they're no longer topical or whatever, or she she put out the wifely veto, or even I sometimes said, let's not go there right now. So there you go.
Okay, you made an interesting comment there, and I think that I know with a good friend of mine, Kevin, had a conversation this morning about the cultural impact of what we believe as Americans, right, and what we've been raised. Freedom of speech being a very, very important right that we value, right?
Yeah.
So does that influence part of why you're doing what you're doing?
Oh yeah, I mean, Thomas Jefferson, I believe, said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I mean, I've used this as an example in the past. I mean, if I say that I think, if you say that Laurence Olivier was the greatest actor of all time, and I say, well, I think Pee Wee Herman is, okay, then put it out there, and people will know that, well, George is an idiot. Now, and if you say Laurence Olivier, and then I say, no, I think it's Robert Duvall, then iron sharpens iron, and putting out a comment, and so I've had to put in a about thing. I said, don't make it defamatory. Let's not slander somebody. Let's not do that. Let's speak about the issue or the argument, that's how you learn things. I've learned a lot. I mean, myself, I'm no know-it-all, and the older I get, the more humble I get about this. So yeah. Anyway,
That shows.
I mean,
shows
for you, like, if I could just jump in too,
yes, Father.
no, I think part of the problem too is I do understand where some of the perspective and concern comes from in regards of, I mean, maybe even just digressing a little bit and like being a little bit more, giving some more form to kind of where we're at in the conversation, meaning what is this thing in regards of what is healthy? Like, is this healthy the way that Orthodox information is happening, Orthodox dialogue, right? And these terms, right? And somebody please reel me in if I'm going too far with the rabbit trail because I'm known to do that. But I would just say, first of all, there's a distinction. I mean, I remember when George's website started, I've been looking at it since the whole time. I've known George for a long time, right?
thank you, Father.
And, I mean, right, George? You've known each other for a long time.
Yeah. No. But I appreciate what you said about the website. I didn't realize that.
I mean, it's just
No.
one of the things is,
By the way, we're going to come visit you, so I'm just letting you know.
please, we're waiting, get you some barbecue. But I would just say that
Right.
I mean this in the right way. People go to George's website because they know what they're getting. They're not going there expecting to read, a treaty on Saint Maximus's approach to fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that in the positive way.
I appreciate that.
I mean that. I mean it in the positive way. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah, totally.
I think that's part of the conversation that people are kind of not understanding is that there's, it's like, the righteous Solomon said, there's a time, there's a time and season for everything under heaven and earth, right? And
Right.
so we're Americans, right? And we're Americans living in this age. There is a place for George's website to discuss things from that perspective and in that way.
Mhm.
And I think the problem is when people lose sight of that, it's if you were to go to I mean, I don't know, just I'm thinking of a more quote unquote sanctioned website. There's certain things that just the context would not be appropriate, right? It's
Right.
like, look, we're Orthodox Christians. Unless you don't, some people don't know any better. So if this is the first time you're hearing it, I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, well, now you know, but you don't show up to liturgy in shorts.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Does that mean shorts are evil? No. It's just that the liturgy is not the place to wear shorts and your Hawaiian shirt.
Mhm.
Right? Okay.
Crap. Just kidding.
I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Right? It's so that context, I think, is part of the problem. Is that people don't realize like there's a time and a place for everything. Listen, Orthodox men like to have cigars and have a finger of whiskey, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Mhm.
But they shouldn't be having fingers of whiskey and cigars in the liturgy. That's not the place for it, right?
Right.
I think one other thing I just want to add on the back end of that is also too the fact that when you realize that we're talking about human beings, and one of the biggest problem that we have a lot of times is, and I'm guilty of this, all of a sudden we have this expectation that we want to place on people that I don't think is human, nor Christian, nor Orthodox, right? And so I say that in this sense, would it be great if every quote unquote Orthodox Christian was humble and meek and loving all the time and Christ-like all the time? Absolutely, right? Are most of us like that? I know I'm not. God forgive me.
Yeah. Right.
God forgive me. And so there's a side of this conversation, not with us, but the broader conversation that's lacking a certain measure of honesty and maturity, which is, people are people and the church is a hospital. And so things are going to get messy and dirty. That's not co-signing it. That's not saying we need to foment acrimony and all those things, but I'm just saying there's a reality to this, right?
Absolutely.
Was that
Yeah.
too much of a rabbit trail? Forgive me. I just
No.
No,
Not at all.
that's a great lead to my next question, Father. Because I think Buck, did you feel you were able to answer sufficiently as well? Did you get your?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to read something else here. Generate thoughts, right? So in a recent video on YouTube, Bishop Irene of London and Western Europe spoke to the difference between orthodoxy on the internet and internet orthodoxy. He found internet orthodoxy to be somewhat concerning, describing it as a condition where, quote, the ethos of orthodoxy is translated from living encounters experienced in the church into an environment which is characterized by an internet presence almost more than other things, unquote. He also criticized a, quote, free-for-all, unquote, where everyone expresses their personal opinions and interpretations. He spoke to his deliberate attempts in his own online forum to limit personal expression in online settings and trying to limit content to questions and answers. So my question is, Father, Bishop Irene discussed an orthodox manner to learning. He described it in that video as, quote, sitting at the feet of the teacher who teaches us, a personal encounter, a living encounter, unquote. He said we should only listen to those illumined by God to teach and those blessed by the church to provide instruction, and that the rest of us should, I guess, be quiet. He finds this orthodox manner to learning rare in internet orthodoxy. He did not say it cannot happen, but that he doesn't see it happening often. So my first question, Father, is it possible that some online forums, Orthodox forums, can be dangerous, can bring about a crisis of catechesis, or potentially have bad intentions? Is that something that can happen deliberately? I guess is the first question.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever witnessed, we don't need to name names, but have you ever seen intentional, deliberate, misleading, or maybe wrong focused Orthodox discussions couched as maybe what is right and true Orthodoxy?
Yes, but let me give some context there. Hitler thought what he was doing is right. Now, I know that's a super extreme example, but that's part of why the example works, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that very few people come at something with how people are understanding the statement, evil intent, right? So if you think about just kind of, getting back to those two hypothetical people, right, that Robin's article is talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one person would be considered a quote unquote leftist, more liberal type of person, right? In their mind, the worst person is some misogynistic, white male extremist, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in her mind, that person, let's say like she has this view of this person and she knows him from it's her sister's boyfriend, right? Let's just say, Jack. Jack is this guy, which is an example of these kinds of crazy white guy extremists, chauvinists who I know, right?
Yep.
He's evil because he hates women. He hates anyone who's not white. You know what I mean? Like that's she has the image, right? And she knows him,
right?
Well, Jack might say, yeah, that's how you see it. I'm all those things, but it's really because, I love tradition. I love, you know what I mean? From Jack's perspective, he doesn't wake up and go like, how can I destroy something? Now, there are people who are like that, but they're way fewer than a lot of people realize.
Right.
And that's what's scary, right? No one wakes up, very few people wake up and like, I want intentional evil. Okay. They do exist, by the way, but they're the average person throwing out some sort of toxic comment. He's just caught in his passions. She's just caught in her passions. And it goes the other way around too. We could flip that easily, right? Or, the conservative person. So what I'm trying to get at is that's what I mean by, no one really intentionally does it. But that doesn't mean that the results of what they're doing aren't damaging, right? And it gets to what His Grace was saying about part of the problem with, and I'm making the distinction here with forums, right? Because like on George's website, there will be, or there was, an article or quote unquote the blog, which is the broader platform of having content put out. But then there will be a comment section in which in that forum people can engage.
Right.
The details matter, right? Forgive me, but the devil is in the details.
Sure, absolutely.
And so
Of course.
the comment section, I mean, there's whole memes about don't go to the comment section on the internet. I mean, that's a thing. That's very different than putting content out there. And so I just want to make that distinction, right?
Sure.
Yes.
All right, I hope that left you thirsty for more, because next week I will drop part 2, and it gets even better. Let's put it that way. We get into some good things. I hope it's edifying so far. And until next week, you guys have a good one.
You get split in half, like on the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.